Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ohio State Primetime Live. I'm your co-host Ryan Spano.
I'm Garrison Gaddy.
Garrison, I know it's actually been a week since we last spoke. I know you had some things to take care of on Thursday, but we got some good news today, and
Yes, we
that's
did.
what I want to start with. Ohio State was able to get the the best safety in the country, Blaine Bradford. He is the number one safety in the class of 2026. He is a recruit that the Buckeyes have been, pretty steady on for a while. And what makes it, pretty, I guess, surprising for most of the outside world is the fact that he's from Baton Rouge. And Ohio State was able to steal from LSU right from their own backyard.
Mhm.
So Bradford comes in and becomes the eighth member of the Buckeyes class and actually becomes the second five-star recruit, along with Chris Henry Jr. So, thoughts on the Buckeyes landing Bradford? Your thoughts on him as a player in general?
Well, as a player, he honestly reminds me of Caleb Downs in a way.
Yeah,
I think
I
that.
agree.
What is
You good?
Sorry, I had some. I had my head music playing, but no, he actually reminds me of Caleb Downs, kind of built in the same way that he is. Uh, Downhill guy, can cover, of course, but really likes to
Mm-hmm.
begin the action, just like Caleb Downs is in the middle of the field. What he does in the defense for Ohio State on defense. Um, Shout out to Matt Gary. shout that he led on this recruitment. Of course, you got the big guy still involved still, but he spearheaded it. He got the job done, and of course, just like you said, it was surprising. Now, I did think Ohio State was going to land one of the top four safeties in the country. I did believe they would. Did I specifically believe it would be Bradford? No, I did not.
Yeah.
Now, the cautious part of me wants to say, okay, well, it's pretty early. It's earlier than I thought that he would make a decision. He does visit Baton Rouge. He goes back to LSU a week after he visits Ohio State on the 13th and then the 20th of June, I believe. So we'll see how that all shakes out. It's a very long time, but from the looks of it, he's happy to be part of it. He said a lot of it has to do with the culture there at Ohio State. It's a winning culture, and same for his dad. So I'm happy.
Yeah, no, me too. You mentioned these are the visits that Bradford still has to take. So next weekend he'll be at Texas, and then he comes to Ohio State the following weekend, and then the weekend after that, which is June 20th, that weekend he will be at LSU.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you got to survive a couple more visits there, but from my perspective, and there have already been reports that he's locked in with Ohio State no matter what. But if
Yeah.
he's going to make this decision before going ahead and taking those other visits, my assumption is that he's really locked in with what Ohio State has, going for him. And whether that's, the coaching with Guerrieri, the defense that Matt Patricia wants him to play, the NIL compensation, or, more than likely all of the above. And, I agree with you in the fact that he is a little bit like Caleb Downs. Like you mentioned, he likes to get downhill and affect the running game. He's 6'1", 207, so he's a pretty stout boy.
Yeah.
He can go in there and, he can do quite a lot when he's in there. But again, he, like Downs, he can also cover a lot of ground, back there at safety. And for the Buckeyes to lose Caleb after this season, because he will be going to the NFL, there's no bones about that, even though he's got a year of eligibility left, and to be able to replace him with someone like Bradford, I think is huge. Now, he is going to have he's going to have some competition as a true freshman to get playing time right away. If he, once he comes in, because it is really hard to play as a true freshman at Ohio State, no matter what position you play. But as we saw with Jeremiah Smith last year, if you're good enough and you've got the goods, you're going to play and you're going to play a lot. So, assuming Bradford's commitment holds, and like you mentioned, 2026 is a long time away. December is several months away, and until that, national letter of intent or whatever they've replaced it with at this point is signed, sealed, and delivered, Ohio State's going to have to keep recruiting this kid, and that's just the nature of recruiting. But very exciting for the Buckeyes to go ahead and get him, and it's it's a good start for the defensive recruiting because we've seen 3 offensive linemen commit here. They've got a wide receiver commit. I've been a little bit since the defense has gotten on the board, so it's good to see. It's good to see them get on the board here.
Also, so I didn't watch the video because I wanted to wait till today to get your thoughts on this commitment. But the third offensive lineman in this next upcoming class, Sam Greer, commits to Ohio State. Now, you give me the layman's notes of what you talked about on the commitment video for him.
Yeah, he is someone who the Buckeyes like as far as his potential. Now, he's not someone who's probably going to make an impact day one. You put the stats there on the screen. He's a big dude. 6'7", 312. That's those are some big stats. But he's got some football development to do. Simply, injuries have been a part of his story. It kept him out of his freshman and sophomore football seasons. So he didn't really get a whole lot of work early. So he's very raw. So that's something that Ohio State recognizes, and he's going to need coached up. Like like I said, he is not ready to contribute right away. Give him a couple years of some coaching, and he's someone who has all the physical tools to be a good offensive lineman. And he simply helps Ohio State have more depth at the offensive line position. And they need more numbers. We've talked about how the last few recruiting cycles weren't exactly up to par in terms of just sheer numbers for the offensive line. Right. And now with all of the guys that they lost, they lost 4 starting offensive linemen essentially from last season. They lost a couple in the transfer portal as well. So that room's pretty thin. So getting a guy like Greer helps them for the future, helps them go ahead and build that depth up. So he's a pretty good player, and expect him to contribute here, and not right away, but like I said, sophomore, junior year.
Yeah, I see the same way you do. A little bit of a project, but he has all the tools. Again, like massive kid, massive.
Yeah.
I do believe that you get a kid like that because you've seen enough to know that he can play at this level. He has a grown man's body, even more so than a grown man's body. 2 of them, to be honest. So with that being, with knowing that show him some new techniques once he gets here, there's a chance you can make a kid like with size like that and potential, you can turn him into a very good football player. And so I do believe that he's a great addition to the class for what he can be. And based off of what Bowen has done already in the recruiting class on the offensive line, as part of it, I think he's done an exponential job so far. He's honestly done more than I expected already, to be honest with you. So
something that I like that he's done so far is he hasn't limited his recruiting pool. I feel like Fry was kind of limited in who he would offer, and that just reduced the chances that you're going to get a commitment. Bowen, I'm not going to say he hasn't been picky, but he's been throwing out offers to a lot of guys, and honestly, a lot of dudes in the state of Ohio, which I think is important as well. So there's still some big fish out there who he has his eye on, and I know we've talked about other chances of getting Jackson Cantwell aren't they're not super high in our opinion, but they're certainly not out of them. But if they can get a couple of really good offensive linemen in this class and a couple, high 4 stars or even a 5-star, then I'm going to feel excellent about Tyler Bowen's first recruiting class.
No, for sure. What would you grade him right now?
Bowen? For the short time he's been with the program, I'd give him so far I'd give him a B+, A-. We haven't seen anything on the field yet, obviously. So
strictly recruiting wise, strictly recruiting.
Well, I know that. That's essentially what my grade's going off of because we haven't seen anything else. But he hasn't landed any super highly regarded kids. Maxwell Riley's the top offensive lineman in the state, and then Greer's obviously pretty good there from Archbishop Hope. And Trey Smith, he's only a 3-star kid. He's someone who I see more as a depth piece. I don't really see him. He is a project as well. I mean, he's someone who needs development. So he hasn't landed any blue chip guys yet, but I love that he's coming out firing and locking down some commitments. That's always going to be fine with me.